Hi everybody, my name is Ian Burke. I'm the chairperson for ASIST@DU this year. Welcome to the first installment of Tech Bites for 2011-2012. Our inaugural speaker is Joseph Sanchez. He's an instructional designer at Auraria Campus Library in Denver. And he's going to be talking about gaming in education. I'm going to keep this introduction extremely brief because we only have 20 to 30 minutes. So take it away, Joseph.
Thank you, Ian. Well, this doesn't feel quite so scary because I know at least half of you here. We're going to look at a bunch of different things. My interest in gaming started like most people who game, just casual. I liked it. I'm a Cro-Magnon gamer is what a lot of my younger gamer friends call me because I played the first Atari. And I played the first stand-up Donkey Kong that you had to put a quarter in, you know, and I played Dragon's Lair, the first Laserdisc video game. Lost interest in gaming in the mid-90s, but picked it up again when I moved out here to Colorado because, well, for a number of different reasons. I was reading about it, looking at the capabilities of what gaming was possible of doing and kind of feeling like, yeah, we're really interested in this in academia, but we're really failing to really harness the full power of what it does. So the first thing that I want to look at is something that we've already looked at in my class last week. But if you're watching online, click on that first link, Gamers Solve Molecular Puzzle That Baffled Scientists. I thought this was a really great example of gaming's true potential and capacity to deal with real-world problems. Most people have probably heard about this, it seems like. The first sentence is a little bit misleading. I mean, video game players have solved the molecular puzzle in the sense that video game players has a lot of connotation to that phrase. Basically, a friend of mine who runs the National Video Gaming Association, he says basically everybody nowadays is a gamer. Because if you play Geared or Sudoku online, you're a gamer. You've already engaged in that, you've played that. And so terms like video game players or gamers, we really need to think of this as just, this is basically everybody who's online. Because at some point you're going to play a game. No matter who you are, you may not realize it, and it may not be with an Xbox or a PlayStation, but you're still gaming. And a lot of you students out there may feel like this whole, MLS program is a game, right? Where you're basically trying to prove yourself and power up to do what? To get out and get your achievement. That's what education is all about. It's about powering up your character, building your resume, which is the same thing that we do in RPG games all the time, which is a really fascinating thing that I started really thinking a lot about 4 years ago. This is a great example of current things. I want to skip down to, what is it? The bottom paragraph here, people have spatial reasoning skills. This part I think is really the core of the article. People have spatial reasoning skills, something computers are not yet good at. Seth Cooper, a UW computer scientist who is Folded's lead designer and developer, explained in a news release. Gamers provided a framework for bringing together the strengths of computers and humans. And I taught K-12 as well as academic. I've taught everything now from kindergarten all the way through graduate school. I'm teaching a graduate course on this for the LIST program next winter, this winter coming, hopefully, still on the books. And this is what really fascinates me, is you bring together the strengths of computers and humans. And if some of you who follow this world may know that the former founder of Microsoft, not the one not Microsoft, Apple, not the one we all know with cancer, but his partner who started with him back in the 80s recently said, computers will be able to teach as good as human beings in the next couple of years. Which is a really provocative statement, right? Especially for those of us in the humanities, those of us in the Mortgage College of Education. Because we know what a good classroom feels like. It's engaging, it's fluid, it's dynamic. You're immersed. You can't stop thinking about what, you leave a good course, even when it's on a Wednesday night, which may not happen that much, but you leave it and you're engaged, you're alive, you want to talk about it, you talk about it with the other people in the classroom. which, okay, that does really replicate a game environment. If you think about games and what you watch in a game, and I've spent a lot of time playing with games and playing with gamers, and you see the same thing. When you have a really good game happen, we keep talking about it. We go tweet it. We tell everybody we know. And it's immersive. It's fully interactive, and it's reflective. It's recursive. It's all these things that a really good classroom environment is. So I started thinking about this. This is a great example of what they do, because computers don't have that spatial reasoning skill. What's really fascinating about this is this was a 10-year problem for the scientists working on it. The gamers solved it in less than 10 days. I think this probably catches a lot of attention and gains a lot of respect for gaming. But what do we do with gaming in education? How do we apply it? We're still not really doing much of it. One of the things that's a huge, huge subject in academia right now is e-textbooks, right? Every couple of weeks another college says, oh, we're jumping on the e-textbook bandwagon. In my mind, if things work out correctly, in my ideal academia, that's just a flash in the pan. Because rather than an e-textbook, you'll simply be downloading a game. Why do I think that? Let me show you Crysis. I saw this a couple of years ago when the first Crysis came out. Crysis 2 has now come out. This is probably the most graphics-intensive game out there. Are these the lights right here? Can I turn off some, or is there a light panel? The environment that you see in front of you is fully interactive. Every single blade of grass, every drop of water, every tree, it reacts to the player's movement, and the artificial intelligence builds and reacts accordingly. The antagonists in the game are not predictable. They have a very, very real artificial intelligence. The player is allowed to go anywhere in this game. The problem for the designers, obviously, was we can't build a game that makes the whole world a fully interactive environment, so what did they do? They put it on an island. So if you think about this game, everything within the boundaries of the island is fully interactive. It has its own weather patterns. You see him shooting the tree, every single tree, he's demoing it right now. The bullet physics, the falling of everything that happens, sound, wind patterns, weather patterns, it's randomized and it's based on real world patterns. They looked at tropical islands when they were building this. I talked to a couple of their developers. They said, we did a ton of research on this, trying to figure out what does a tropical island really feel like. The only thing that's not real is the kickback on the rifle. Because the game already, I've played it, is so real that it's 10 times harder than most games that I'm used to just walking through, because of the artificial intelligence of the antagonists and the way that they constantly move and the way that the environment is never the same when I played it. I saw this, another version of this game, and played it with a friend of mine about 3 or 4 years ago, right before the iPad came out, and I was on the lead on embedding iPads into a physician's assistant program at Red Rocks Community College. We manage it through the libraries, manage the content. A lot of you know about this, I apologize. But one of the problems as I was talking to the physician's assistant was she said that we're really worried about retention of knowledge. These are really dedicated, diligent students, but it's a ton of content and it costs a lot of money to get X amount of cadavers when, for example, they're doing their dissections and vivisections. And when a student makes a lateral incision, or if I make a lateral incision and they miss that, you can't go back and redo. And I'd been playing games about the same time, and I started thinking, well, how complicated is it? When they can build something this incredible and self-contain it in an island, why couldn't we do an anatomy and physiology game with the PlayStation 3 or the Microsoft Kinect, where the person virtually does the same thing multiple times, and the game actually would allow you, if you think about a design element, if I design it like this and build out all the layers, because the human body is a contained environment just like this island. There's only X amount of things, and I started working on it. What are the things that we need to learn in anatomy and physiology? Give me the learning modules. And I started comparing that to the things that went into the development of this game, and actually developing an anatomy and physiology course for a game. was less labor intensive and graphics intensive than doing this. Because the things that they needed to learn, the human body, of course, has a lot more to it. But she said if you can just get, there was about 15 to 16 different things that she said if you can do these and have it scalable, make it zoomable so that somebody grabs it and goes up to this level. Granted, it wouldn't go down to a molecular level, and we couldn't do certain pieces of chemistry, but it did do all the basic core concepts, at least what we were working on. We modded out a PS3 and installed Windows 7 on it so we could play with Maya, if you're familiar with 3D modeling and graphics, and bought a PlayStation Move. But obviously I got hired somewhere else, and then we saw people getting sued for modding out PlayStation. We're going to back off of that, but the idea that came out of that was really, really mind-boggling to me as an educator. Because one of the things we look at with gaming, especially those of us who are outside, and even those of us who are inside the gaming culture, is we look at the dangers of gaming. We look at the violence. We look at, and people talk about, well, it's different from violent movies because you're immersed in it, right? The student or the player actually has to be the person doing the killing. So you're taking another step deeper into the experience that the game is giving you. And one thing we've tended to focus only on the negative aspect of that immersion. And I started thinking, what if we could harness that immersive capacity for education? To immerse a student in an experience so well that their retention goes up. And to use the existing framework of games to score people, to assess people. At my current institution, I'm developing a 2D-based Flash video game that will teach information literacy skills. You may have heard them in the library field. We call them tilt tutorials based on, I think, the first one that was ever done. I looked at a bunch of them and I thought, these are really boring. I mean, and they are. I mean, they're very simple graphics, or text-based, web-based things that you just click and click and click and click. Some of them have a little bit of music, maybe a little bit of animations, and I thought, why not build a game that does this? Wouldn't be that hard. And the assessment part is what we call in the gaming industry experience points. The more experience points the student builds up, and there's a way to rank it, you know, because I thought, as I was thinking about this, well, yeah, but some students are just going to do what they always do, click, 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 until they're done, right? I'm just going to click all the options. But if they select the wrong option, which is what happens over here on the Cosmic Log game, where was it? Right here. Follow the same chemical rules that are obeyed by real molecules. When someone playing the game comes up with a more elegant structure that reflects a lower energy state for the molecule, his or her score goes up. Games already have the same type of assessment built into them that educators have been doing for years and years and years. The only difference is that game developers are better at getting their target market to keep doing it, and doing it, and doing it, and doing it, and trying different alternatives. That's what mods are all about. With this game that we're building, we're doing a one-shot run-through, and then we're going to spin off mods so that students keep coming back and playing it because they want to unlock the zombie mod. They want to unlock the superhero mod. We've got a couple different mods that we've kind of come up with that we thought would be really fun that will teach the same thing, but just with a different spin on it. And it also allows them to rank themselves. And we'll give them something, we'll create their avatars and score them against each other. And see who comes up with the best information literacy score. Don't know how it's going to work, honestly. You know, there's a lot of promise and a lot of potential here, but this is an early foray into this. But I think this kind of just touches the very beginning of what games are capable of doing. Imagine taking the Microsoft Kinect or the PlayStation Move and building a DNA replication, letting the students stand in front of the screen and build it, zoom it up however they like to feel. Think about what a game could do for chemistry and for the retention, or cellular biology. We all remember basics, you know, cellular biology. Bio 1 and Bio 2 to me seem really easy. I took both of those, zoology. That would be super easy to build because a cell is a fairly simple construct compared to the island on Crysis. Now, Crysis, again, it's probably one of the top games out there in terms of development and really utilizing the full capacity of a computer. But I realized, take a cell and teaching cellular biology, there's really not that much there compared to one of these video games and the amount of time people put into developing games, the amount of content, the physics engine that has to go into every single blade of grass and every single leaf that blows through the wind and making the weather patterns constantly change. I thought, wow, why don't we start playing with these ideas? This is the promise of gaming, I think. Obviously, there's a huge gap between application and what we dream of, what I'm dreaming of and what a number of us in the industry are dreaming of. But I would encourage you to think about it, keep reading about it, and be expecting at some point to be buying games instead of textbooks, because you can put a whole lot more content on a game than you can in an e-textbook. The e-textbooks that I'm developing with a couple professors at UCD, I'm trying to lead them already in this direction where we'll embed video and audio and hyperlinks, and there'll be different things that the student can unlock, different content that gets unlocked when they've achieved a certain level of mastery in the built-in tests and assessments that are in the textbook. I'm already trying to move this direction because the game as a function, as a feature, does what we've always wanted to do. It grabs our user and says, you're going to play even when you don't want to play. Gamers stay up hours and hours at a time. I mean, imagine what this does to our culture, telling little Johnny in 10 years, go to your room. You haven't played enough games today. I don't want you coming out until you've powered up. It seems absurd, right? It's funny, oh, we chuckle, but why can't education be that engaging? Isn't that why we're all here in academia? Because at some point we heard a professor, a lecture, where we were captured by a concept or an idea. And this is what, this is what I'm really fascinated about. This is what I'm interested in. That's what games do. They've just done it for entertainment. But if you look at the content and you extrapolate those concepts, it's not much different than what we do in the classroom. I just think they might be doing it better than the way we do it in the classroom. I'm not trying to replace professors. I'm not trying to replace teachers. I think I disagree with the co-founder of Apple. I don't know if the artificial intelligence will ever replicate the human interaction. I've talked about this in a lot of the classes I teach, how there's something about us as 3D creatures, as physical creatures, where we need a certain type of physical interaction. But games can flatten the learning curve and actually cheapen it, right? Because Ian knows as a gamer, it's expensive when you go buy a new game, right? 80 bucks. How much is a textbook, though? In perspective, right? It'll suddenly make the cost of the game seem like, wait a second, that's a lot cheaper than a textbook. Textbooks are anywhere, well, our textbook in my class this quarter is $80, which is ironic because it's like, oh, that's the top price, typically price point for a video game. And I just thought I wish I could have just had them go out and buy a game or download a game to their PC or their Mac, and just that's it, you're done. It's got everything in the book and then some. It's got all my content that I customized into it, and it's got assessments built into it. I think that's the direction gaming can go, and that's the direction I'm trying to push it. And there's a number of people in the industry doing this from all different places, moving in different directions, but I would challenge you to think about gaming in that way, as an immersive environment, as an educational environment, as a way of teaching beyond just getting to the test and passing the test, but teaching for mastery, teaching for knowledge, and then teaching for social reasons, right? For science-based reasons. In the future, we'll be using games to solve more and more problems. I mean, we're already doing this. I think I'm done. Any questions? Yeah, there's a lot of, that was one of my #1 questions, and that we talked about in the PA program when we were trying to develop it. And we even thought, what if we just don't call it a game? What if we take the word game off of it and call it like a learning object or a learning module? But I don't know if it's purely linguistic. I think there definitely is a learning curve. I mean, if you've never played games and you grab an Xbox controller, it's really overwhelming, you know, because there's what, 2 directional buttons, 6 buttons on the face, 4 buttons on the top, you know, and then a trigger. I mean, it's a steep learning curve from the old Nintendo with A and B and a directional pad, or the Atari that just had a stick and a red button that everybody could do. But I mean, if the Air Force can teach people to fly $60 million planes using video games, surely we could teach people to do surgeries. The demographic question is tricky. The interesting thing is that below certain levels, certain ages, it's not socioeconomic barriers, there's no gender barriers, there's no racial barriers, everybody's gaming. It's been shocking just to me seeing the number of girls that would come into my game lab, and they're not the stereotypical gamer girl. Had a lot of girls that would come in, and people from every walk of life would play games. So I think that demographic shift will become less of an issue as, you know, more and more American, at least Western youth are immersed and raised in a culture of gaming. But for now, it is kind of spooky. Like, I do think about how would certain people take this if I said, here, this is your course content. You know, I don't think it'd be fair.
I have a question on how much the addictive quality of games comes from the fact that a game you want to use games to teach. You're not going to be requiring players to play. How do you think changing the game from freely entered to required will affect?
It depends on the quality of the game, Erica. I think that's all that matters. Because if you look at the games that they enter freely, there's a ton of games nobody plays, and game studios are constantly closing down because they freely choose not to play that. But if you design the game so that it's fully engaging, if, for example, building molecules or doing DNA strands is engaging, is well done, it's not poorly developed, I think regardless of their freedom or not, I would tell you a lot of gamers would say they do not choose of their own free will to play. They're addicted. So I mean, I think if we can harness that fun side and the more immersive side, we can bypass the potential of, you know, the same thing we always have with human nature where you tell somebody to do it, they just instinctively, I don't want to do that. You know. I hope that answers your question a little bit, Erica. So we'll take another question while we're waiting. No. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think gaming's already solved that in a lot of ways because, I mean, you look at MMOs and you look at how people form these online communities with people they don't know. I could see classes saying, okay, you know, like let's say, for example, the class we're going to in a few minutes, it goes from 7 to 9:20. Maybe every third Wednesday, we show up an hour later and we all just meet virtually and game together, work on the same projects together. I could see the professor being asked a question and coming in virtually to answer the question instead of having to be there physically. And then the rest of it, the layers of it, can just be developed on an as-needed basis. And that's the beauty of games, is that they're so flexible and there's so many different types, and the infrastructure is so broad and wide that we have so much capacity already there for us to take advantage of. So I hope that kind of answers the question. I mean, there's a lot of pieces of that question where we need specific examples. Well, I don't, yeah. I see what you're saying.
If someone were to give me the content via game, and if I can get a hold of this and just sign
Yeah.
up for a course.
That's a very good question, and it's an honest question. I think we have to deal with that honestly in academia. I don't have an answer. I mean, it's possible that, you know, and we've talked about this in my course already, how like it's not just librarians who've seen their jobs threatened, it's everybody by this, where we all could end up having something that's obsolete if we don't adapt. So to be honest, that's a good question. If I knew, I probably would already have a game studio going. That's the question to me. It's like people always are like, oh, that's great, but then when you ask them to commit to some time, it's hard. I think you need to find the right collection of variables at a university, probably at a legacy university where they've got money and they've got the right pieces to pull together, and you'll need somebody to direct that, and you'll need some vision in their supervisor to say, you know what, we're going to carve off a ton of your workload just to let you explore with this. But like to me, it's like you go to the medicines, field of medicine, you go to the sciences, and you start developing small pieces of it to develop interest and say, look, this is where we need to go. But I would start with medicine and hard sciences, which is ironic because I'm a humanities guy. But I think they get it, and they'll see the capacity a lot faster, plus the content's ready-made to go. But as far as the rest of your question, that's why it's not there. That's why I'm talking about it rather than showing it to you. I'm sure somebody else will figure it out. That's also why I like to share with as many people as possible, because maybe somebody here will take it and go, okay, I never thought of that. I can do it. It's a great question. We had a prototype for the anatomy and physiology one that was really clunky and simple, and because of Sony starting to sue people, we kind of backed off, and that was the only way I knew how to do it. And I was literally doing this like backdoor. I mean, I was using a couple of kids that I knew at Red Rocks who were making $8 an hour to do this. I took them off the library front desk, bought them a bunch of equipment, and said, have fun. This is my vision, here's what I want. So it's really complex. The more I learn about game development, I've been reading it, it's like, geez, this is not what we think of. You know, it's years and years of work, unless you have a set studio that's already ready to take over. That's why I'm starting to write. I've been trying to get stuff published on this in the academic community, and I realize they may not listen, so I'm trying to now get published in the gaming community because I think they will. Yeah.
3 years, 250. What's the, say, development time for?
I would guess like a dozen people, and the budget, it's flexible. If it's in an academic institution, we should already have most of what we need available to us. And I'm trying to do it with like either graduate students or senior level students for the course of a year, and then I'll just keep working on it in pieces. But that's the problem that I don't know. I've been talking to my friends at the NVGA and at Cutthroat Association to try and figure this out. But I think I need about a dozen people putting in 30, 40 hours a week for at least a year to do my my cellular biology, just the cell, just playing with the cell. And money's not really a big deal because it's already contained in the university. We'll just grade them, make it a 3-credit class or do something like that, you know what I mean? So they'll pay to build my content. So it's a great question. That's a big challenge. Are we done? Yeah, we are. We got another class we got to get up to. We're on the 4th floor, correct. My class is free to go, obviously. I'll see you up there. Thanks for coming. Good questions. Oh.